Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Global Astrology, Know Your Nation, Know Yourself. This is Hoagie Meister here, and the wings are back. And this is, I did a video recently in response to what was happening with Boris Johnson. As we understand in global news, he is currently in intensive care, and we're hoping that he will make a swift recovery. And I went over certain details of his chart as to why that would be happening. Now, this is the first in the series of really where I actually explore a nation, house by house. On this occasion, it is the UK. And essentially what the format will be, and the many requests have started to come in already for countries, of course, like America, China. We see there are issues in Japan, but we also see countries that are doing very well, like Germany, for example. And I've actually done a chart for Germany because it's very interesting why they're responding very well. But this is the series, you could say, that sets the template for all of those coming forward. And what I'll be doing, I'll be exploring nations house by house. Now, I have explored this in previous videos, and you're welcome to look at those. There's one that I did on the Inspired Stage online channel and already in earlier videos, so you can see where I'm coming from. So I encourage you to watch those videos. But also as well, if you'd like a consultation with me or anything like that, you can go to my website, which is the archetypalblueprint.com. And I'm also available on Instagram at Hogarth Brown, same for Twitter. And I have my Facebook pages, which are the archetypalblueprint.com on Facebook, and also Hogarth Brown Author, because I am an author and an artist. Oh, actually, let me just do a little quick flash here. Woo! That's a piece of work from a while ago. And of course, there'll be more information on these things. But just to kind of crack on, so what the basic concept is this: how am I examining these countries? And in a way, it's a kind of almost it's almost like an astro-psychology. That's not a word that is currently in the English language, but it's the best way to describe what I'm talking about now. Now, in going over nations and their charts and how they respond, this is actually very significant because of the situation that we're in globally right now. And as you can see, there's a great deal of variation. I would say with the UK chart, we're somewhere in the middle. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. And for reasons for that, those will be explained. I'm particularly worried about the United States and their configuration in their charts. But this is about Blighty. So this is about the UK. So I'm going to get stuck in, although I'm going to deal with the first house, I will also talk about the fourth house because this is very significant. And let me just kind of preface that as well. Let's just say, just discuss here, the first house represents the self, the identity and the body, and very much how we come across to others. Just pick that up. And so whatever happens with the first house, whatever sign it's in this case for the UK, it's Libra. This kind of not only sets the tone and the personality, but the lordships of which planets rule which houses. And this is very significant because planets have different personalities, different ways of expressing, and different ways of doing things. So that's the first house. I'm also going to focus on the fourth house, which is an angle. And pardon me, I should explain the importance of angles. Angles are kind of like, they're like gears. If you imagine those wheels that they used to use on ships, and you can see I've highlighted here in green, it's because they turn the chart. So they're very, very significant. So the main angles are the fourth house, the 10th house, 4, 10, 7, and the first house as well, which does double duty because it also acts as a trine. And what is a trine? A trine is a very beneficial house, and the trines are 1, 5, and 9, which in the UK over here is over here. Just because there's not a planet in there, it doesn't mean that that house is not working. It is. So the reasons why I want to talk about houses 1 to 4, or 1 and 4 in particular, is literally because of the coronavirus right now and where the sun is situated in a UK chart. So first of all, I should explain the sun represents the soul. It represents but it's the unexpressed part of the soul. It's the true nature of the soul. It's why we're here. It's the kingdom. It's often the capital city. It's how we shine. It's where we attain our highest inspiration. But the sun also represents other things as well. So along with Saturn, planet Saturn, the sun also represents government. Right, remember that. The sun also represents government, along with Saturn. That is very significant because in these very kind of testing and trying times, we have something called a grand stellium. I'm referring to it as a grand stellium. I've mentioned it in other books and I'll use my overlay in a second, but this grand stellium is happening in Capricorn at the moment. So wherever you are in the world, whatever country you're in, if you look at that, either that individual or that nation's chart, the grand stellium is happening in Capricorn, sidereal Capricorn. You need to remember this is sidereal astrology that I use, not tropical, which is one side ahead in Aquarius. I'll do an explainer video on that later, but for us, we are currently in Capricorn, and this really bears out. Capricorn is the sign where all the action is happening. And I've already mentioned to you that the sun is the government. And if anyone's watching UK politics right now, we can see there is an awful lot going on with the government. But I digress slightly. Let's go back to the first house before I spring back. So this is the UK. Essentially, we are a Libra nation. So we see here the sign of Libra. The ascendant is here. I've already explained in former videos, but the way you decide an ascendant on the chart, if you imagine that this is the circle, how do you decide the first house? You do it based on the sunrise, so it's like the horizon. So in the UK, Libra was rising on the eastern horizon at the time that the UK became the United Kingdom, which was on the 1st of January 1st, 1801 at 12 midnight with the Act of Union. Now I've used 12 midnight because that is when, for countries at least, most laws become enacted. Like for example, with the German reunification charts, that happened at 12 midnight. That's when all the fireworks went off because that starts the new day. If you see recently with the UK effectively sort of in the transition period of leaving the European Union, we had the big kind of Big Ben bongs go off at 11 p.m. UK, but that was midnight European time. So this is used a lot in politics. So midnight is very useful unless stated otherwise, and I always check through with history to make sure that those things are accurate. So I'm very confident of this chart, and it does work. The irony with this chart is I do use the actual tropical positions on the UK chart because it's just a perfect fit. But however which way you dice it, it all pans out to the same. Let me just have a quick slurp here. Got to keep myself hydrated. Right, so the first house. Let's look at the basic elements of the British personality. Libra. What is Libra all about? It is ruled by Venus, who rules Libra and Taurus. But Libra in particular is the sign of diplomacy. Now this is out of all of the symbols of the zodiac, this is the only one that actually represents something human per se. And the symbol of Libra is the scales. Now a lot of people just think it's justice. Justice is a big factor. Libra has a lot to do with the war, but what it essentially represents is the marketplace. So imagine people would go around with their scales weighing up people's money. So Libra, above anything else, is not only the sign of relationships, but it's also trade, how we interact with people, how we come across. That's why it's the sign of diplomacy. Now, if Brits will know this, but anyone that is familiar with Brits, is that we tend to be quite diplomatic in the sense of, which is actually quite annoying for a lot of people, we tend to be quite indirect. The Brits are indirect. it's quite tricky to get a straightforward answer out of a Brit if they don't know you. Now, this can be frustrating for many cultures because many people are just like, oh, Lord, why can't they just come out and just say what it is that they need to say? But, you know, we do get there eventually, but it takes a while. But the reason why is because of this overlay of diplomacy. The Brits like to be calm and polite. We try not to make too much of a fuss, again, which is a very Libra quality. We try to be genteel, ideally, although we know that this is not always true. And you know, we try and put our best foot forward, particularly when we don't know someone. So people can often find that maybe a bit disingenuous, but there is more. In here, now whatever planet is in the first house will make a big impact on the personality. Of course, how could it not? If you imagine if you've got flatmates, so you're living in a room share. So imagine that this is a flat and that flat is empty. It doesn't mean that the objects in that flat don't exist, but when you come into that flat, that changes the vibe. But of course, when someone else comes into the flat, that changes the flavor. It is just the same with planets. So that is the overall tone. Libra sets the tone. You could say Libra sets the rules of the Big Brother house. So let's use that analogy. So in here we have this planet and it's called Ketu. It's designated as a half planet. It's not a full planet because it's a coordinate and it's to do with the nodes of the moon, along with Rahu here. So they're points of fate and destiny. I've already explained this in other videos, so please watch those. But in essence, Ketu is like, wherever it is in the chart, they say Ketu is like the castle or like the flag that you put up in terms of Vedic astrology. It's the stronghold, yeah? But it's like having a little black hole or a little plug hole in the chart. And one of the things Ketu is known for is being uptight, yeah? We've heard this before about Brits. Obviously, I'm slightly different, but the point is, wherever Ketu is in the chart, it's like a gravity comes in there and it pulls down, it narrows down, it scrutinizes, and it becomes quite uptight. Brits are known for this. We do have this uptight quality, and we're often seen as standoffish or maybe not warm or friendly. This is an illusion. The Brits are extremely passionate, and where you can see that passion is actually in the opposite house, the 7th house. And Rahu and Ketu are always opposite each other. But the 1st house and the 7th house are also opposite each other. That's how Brits respond abroad. I'll do a special on that, but let's just say for now, anyone that is a Brit, we know that we're very different abroad. No, completely different personality. Libra is the sign of diplomacy. Aries is just going out there, doing whatever it is that you want to do with passion, with gusto, and maybe not so polite. So that's the different part of the British personality, which I'm sure many will know. So that's discussing Ketu, yeah? It's a point of fate, point of destiny, creates uptightness, but it also can create great intelligence as well. Ketu is very, very good with mathematics and many other things. It is also unfortunately responsible for pandemics, but that will be discussed later when I'll do separate videos on the nodes in particular. But here we have planet Uranus in the 1st house. Drop my sticks again. This is very significant. Planet Uranus, although it's an outlying planet, it's beyond Saturn. So these planets were not counted originally in Vedic astrology, but me being a neo-Vedic astrologer, I include the outer planets because they're very important. They move, although they move very slowly, they change society. They're known as the transpersonal planets. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, Moon, and Sun, they're all considered personal planets. Now we know that the Sun is not a planet, it's a star, but for the sake of astrology, that's how it's described. Planet Uranus is the planet of revolution, sudden shocks, things that come out of the blue, the unexpected, but it's also a planet of liberation, particularly liberation for the masses. Now, this might get you scratching your head, because if we remember, in 2016 we had a rather important election, didn't we? Well, not election, vote on whether or not we were going to stay in the EU. Now, this is very significant. I call planet Uranus the Brexit planet. So wherever this planet falls in a nation chart, it's going to have that Brexit-like effect. Now, I use Brexit because it's universal. Everyone understands it. It's gone round the globe. But planet Uranus did cause Brexit. Now, why? This is a fixed representation of the UK chart. So this is like a Polaroid of where the UK was at that time in 1801. But of course, planets continue to move. So they go around, or you know, the planets move clockwise, the nodes of the moon move anti-clockwise. Anyway, they keep going around. In 2016, planet Uranus sidereally was here, yeah, in Pisces, going over natal Pluto actually, and this is our NHS. It will be explained in another video, but planet Pluto is a planet of crisis and transformation and rebirth. Yeah, we see that going on a lot for all nations because of this giant stellium going on in Capricorn. But anyway, I digress. The important thing is this: Uranus was here. Now you see here, I've got this red line here with these kind of slightly angry images, kind of energy coming out the top. This is called a Gandanta point. What is Gandanta? It is when a water sign, like Pisces, goes into a fire sign, like Aries, or vice versa. Yeah? So fire going into water or water going into fire. Either way, it's like a boiling pot of water. And when a planet gets into this point, it really is sort of up the proverbial creek without a paddle. Because you can imagine, what is it like being in boiling water? Deeply uncomfortable. Now, on that fateful vote, just the day, on the day, planet Uranus was Gandanta. Literally, it was just between the two signs. Gandanta means drowning. So you had the planet of revolution and shocks and surprises drowning at the time when the UK vote was happening, which I find fascinating. On top of that as well, when major planets are in the Gandanta point, they can also cause storms. Uranus is known actually for causing storms and even earthquakes actually. And isn't it funny, the result was often referred to as an earthquake. So at that time, one of my friends, a dear friend of mine called Melanie, who's from Germany originally, she lives here, but she was trying to fly home at the time, and she remembered she couldn't fly home because there was a huge storm on the day of the vote. Now, what I find even more fascinating, when the result came in, what happened? We all know it was basically almost 50-50, exactly. It was 52-48. Planet Uranus, who is in our first house, was literally half in and half out, or rather half in, half out of Pisces and Aries. Literally half in, half out. It had a foot in each sign. And what happened? It was 50-50. A few days later, it moved directly into Aries, where it stayed for 3 months. Now, Aries is a sign of combat. The 7th house represents foreign things, our relationships with others. It can also represent foreign lands, things abroad. That's what the referendum was about, wasn't it? Our relationship, our marriage with Europe. The 7th house deals with relationships and marriage, which was opposite Libra, which is a planet, which is a sign of not only of relationships and marriage, but trade. That was the axis that we were running at that time. And as we know, Aries is a planet of conflict, of energy, but most importantly of independence and striking out on your own, combined with the independent planet also being in the 7th house and natally going over Rahu, which are the points of destiny. But Rahu is also about going out there and almost devouring things. We'll talk in detail about the British Empire when it comes to that, which might be quite a controversial subject. But I just wanted to illustrate with this point, this is how astrology can influence us on Earth. We always have the option to go for the different vibrations. We can go for the lower vibration, the mid vibration, or the highest one. And given the context of what's happening around the world right now, you know, many people, you know, are having a different perspective on this whole referendum. But that is for another debate. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm going to wrap up here. So then again, so just to re-emphasize, this is the UK's first house. In fact, I'm not going to wrap up. That's not true. I need to talk briefly about the 4th house, the sun representing government, the grand stellium. I'm just going to do a little overlay here, a bit of a Tony Hart kind of moment for those that know that little art program. I mean, why not? You know, got my art thing. Now, look, this is the hot box. So we have Pluto, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn all in the sign of Capricorn for like the next few months or so. This will change and I'll do a new tracing. But for now, it's relevant. So we have Saturn is what? Mars is energy, Mars is strategy, Mars can represent the military, and Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn. So we see a lot of strategy going on right now, don't we? We see the military helping to, you know, move things around. We see people volunteering, especially Jupiter, who is debilitated in the sign of Capricorn. Jupiter represents money, abundance, children, but especially cash flow. So what's happening at the moment globally? The economies are down. There's no cash flow. But planet Pluto is an intense planet of transformation, rebirth, death as well, unfortunately, as we are seeing globally. Pluto is so intense. So we're all going through these transformations at the moment. And Saturn is the planet of restriction, of confinement, of simplicity, of discipline, of duty, of retreating from the world and contemplating. Sound familiar? This is basically happening all over the world. Saturn rules the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius, so he's incredibly powerful. He spends about 2.5 years in each sign. So, and he's got the signs back to back in Vedic astrology. So that's 5 years, people. I'm not saying we're going to be confined for 5 years, but we're going to have 5 years of Saturnian restructure. Saturn represents structure, government as well, how things are done, architecture, music, but particularly classical music, anything that has a clearly defined structure. And these are all being made topsy-turvy right now. Now, Saturn and the Sun are not friends. I should explain. Saturn is the son of the Sun in the mythology. There's a long thing. I can't go into the whole story of this video. Will get too long. But they're not so friendly to each other. So if you imagine the Sun is the king or queen, represents all leaders. Yeah, anyone of high office, your boss, people that you respond to, you know, institutions, basically authority. And Saturn is his son. He represents authority as well, but he's got a bit of a grudge with his dad, and his dad's not very nice to him because basically there was a little bit of mischief that happened in the mythology of the gods. But anyway, Saturn is now the landlord, because these are his houses. Saturn is now the landlord of the Sun. So the Sun has to do what Saturn says. And we have seen this quite literally, haven't we, with the government. Many senior figures in the government have had the virus, or remains to see how many, but key if we think of the king in a nation's chart, the king is often the president or the prime minister, the leading figure, male or female. And who's being affected by all of this restriction and all this stuff right now? Boris Johnson in particular. Now, I've gone into the details of his chart, but I just wanted to illustrate that point of how the planets begin to affect each other. I'll do separate videos on those planets and how they're going to affect us in the future. But I think for now, I leave it there. So that was house number 1, the UK's chart, with a little bit of flavour, of course, of house number 4. And I'll just make a succession of videos as we begin to understand what's coming up. Here is the second house. This is what we consume, and we can begin to understand why Brits are so fond of a drink. We all know that one. And this is also as well part of a much bigger project where I've started writing a book about the UK chart, originally called Why the Fourth House Issues, Why the UK Struggles with Love. That's now going to be revised and changed because, of course, everything has changed so much. It's going to be called Fourth House Issues, Why the UK Struggled with Love Until Coronavirus. So because we really are seeing the love kind of start to come out now in the UK. The fourth house also represents the heart, and these are truly times where we are being forced to be more compassionate. I am an author of other books, so indulge my little plug here, but I write historical adventure fiction. Book number 1, Beyond the Gates of Hermes. Book number 2, Beyond the Raging Flames, ironically based in Italy. Actually, I should probably just hold those up a little bit longer, shouldn't I? There we are. So if anyone's interested in my books, of course, you can go to my website and follow any links. I will be doing, finishing off my book soon for the UK, but these charts here give you a little flavour and understanding of what it's about. But I also use statistics and official government data, international data, to further underpin these factors so people can really see the correlation between planets and behaviour on planet Earth, but particularly in nations where we can actually see it live. So thank you very much, everyone, for this video. A little bit more calm and coiffed than the last one. And again, if anyone would like a consultation with me, you can go to my website at thearchetypalblueprint.com or follow me on social media. I'll put those links will be in the description of the video. And for now, thank you very much, and see you for house number 2. Cheers.